I know in the work that I've done, which is not in artwork, but in other things that I've been involved in, sometimes being under pressure and having someone ask for something specific is inspirational. It's rather like a haiku poem. It's got a structure and you have to fit that structure. Does that work for you? That if I know you've done both what I would call creative art or pure art, and you've done commercial work as well. In both cases, you sometimes get put under a deadline. So, is that a burden or an inspiration to you when you have a specific thing that you're being asked to do?
It's not, a lot of times it depends on the client. It really does. No, I love a challenge, but I've also always insisted that I do my thing rather than you tell me what you want and me trying to please you. In other words, you're trying to get into my head or use my hand, and that never works. A good example of these right here. When Reggie Van Stockholm first told me that to illustrate his books, the first time we did it, he gave me all kinds of instructions. I want this, I want this, I want this. And I was thinking while he was telling me that sucks. Let me read it. And I read it, and I did what he wanted, and then I did what I thought I would do if I was uninhibited or with no instructions. And right away he said, don't ever listen to me again. Just don't ever listen to me again. And he never has given me another bit of instruction on what he wants and expects out of any of his works. But there are people, I don't mind a challenge. I really don't.
Yeah, but the things, the follow up, I guess, would be the things you created for him in that case. You wouldn't have done had he not asked for it. It's not like you discovered him and said, hey, I think I'd like to do an illustration for you. He was prompting you to do it. So you had an impetus of, I have to follow through on this, rather than you start with a blank canvas and you can do anything you want. What do you do? I don't know if I'm being clear in the question, but does it take a stimulus to get your artistic response, or do you feel something inside you that has to be expressed?
Again, there's so many different situations I'm in. When I'm reading a book and illustrating a book, all the inspiration comes out of the words. Yeah. Where's the action? I'm looking for the action in the story. Yeah. And that's what I'll describe. If I'm doing something on my own without any outside influence, without directions, without a goal, in other words, I just look at a blank canvas and say, what am I going to do today? That's when, honest to God, I believe in what is called the muse. I can start something and have something in mind, but something kind of takes over in a way. A lot of times, it really takes over. I'm planning to do something, and it's like a voice in my head says, don't do that. Don't do that. Try this. And I'll say, are you out of your mind? And I'll do something that is contrary to what I think we should do. And I say, well, it's just pain. I go over it. But I'm directed a lot of times. I really feel I'm directed going in a different direction than I would normally go in. And there's a lot of that in a lot of my paintings. I'm doing something, then once I've done one part of a painting, the other parts just come. It's not like I have to figure out what am I going to do next. It's hard to explain. It's like again, that's why I say there's a muse involved that's taken over my body. and if I try to ignore that, my stuff comes out like shit. I mean, I don't like anything. If that's not there, I'll go do something else. I gotta wait for that ghost to appear and help me do. I'm actually doing somebody else's work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've always thought. Because I look at some of the stuff I've done and go, how in the world did I do that? I couldn't do that again for big money. I mean, I've really looked at paintings and gone, I have no clue how I did that. And I'm being serious. And if I was asked to do that again, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, it's that confusing sometimes. Other times, it's not, you know. Some of these simpler things go, I had an idea in my head, I laid it down, boom. You know, I didn't ever feel like I was involved with anything spiritual. It was just, that's truly me, like this stuff here on the wall. But other times it's magical. It's almost freaky that, these ideas come, and I'm like, where in the hell did that come from? I don't think like that. That's not what I do. And I've learned over the years, just go with it. You know, just go with it.
So you're saying sometimes you would start out for one reason with one inspiration, maybe something that you'd seen or something you'd heard or something you thought of, something you saw on the news, whatever, that sparked a reaction from you. But as you did it, that changes
it all
into
changes,
something
yeah.
else.
A lot of times it all changes.
Yeah.
You take off in one direction, think I'm going to do this, and next thing you know, you're doing something that you didn't plan, and you wonder where the hell that come from. So,
well, one other question that I had is it relates to some things that I've done. I mean, I did do a degree in art. I'm not an artist. It was not the calling that for me that maybe I wanted it to be, but it wasn't. But one of the things that happened to me was I overworked things.
Oh yeah.
I start out and you have something nice and you can't stop. Something compels you to go on, and when you go on, you lose it. Has that happened to you?
Oh, I learned that a long time ago. Matter of fact, in the first art class we had with Al Moore, I remember going in there one Saturday with you, and started painting something, and it was a moon with clouds. You know how the moon works with clouds. With
I remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the first time I did, I was like, how did I do that? That's wonderful. But then I started noodling with it, and the next thing I know, I had garbage. I mean, It was something that was it's like finger painting. Yeah. It was horrible. And I learned then, you got to know when to stop.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with music. You got to know what's too much,
Less is more.
Oh, I remember I've ruined so many good paintings that I had just with a stroke I did, you know what I mean? You put a stroke in there, it's like, wow, that came out great. And then I say, well, I'm going to do more of that. And it doesn't work. And next thing you know, you lost what you had, and you can't get back to that. And that's happened many times early in my life, I just feel like I ruined a goddamn painting, just leave it alone. Angel used to call it finger fucking. So quit it. You're finger fucking it.
As I look back over all the things that I've seen that you've done, and I haven't seen all your work because I know sometimes these things are done on a commission or done quickly, or you've sold them and so forth. But of the things I've seen, I've noticed that you go through periods of style that are distinctly different. You talked about the realism versus the folk art and abstraction and so forth. When you feel that impulse, when the muse is speaking to you, do you see that as requiring a certain style, or is the style something that kind of goes from, I got these paints in the box and I'm going to use those. So are you using what's at hand and what you're comfortable with at the moment, or does the idea spark
all the above? I remember a lot of times I would be looking at a gallery or looking at something and say, like Cubism, and say,